There is a revolutionary impetus at the heart of the American. That's what we are. We were
Yeah.
and I don't think that the founding fathers were itching to pick a fight.
If you go through the sixth floor museum in Dallas, if you go in there believing every word of the Warren Report, you're going to walk out of there like Alex Jones.
What percentage of China's economy is us buying like knockoff Tupperware in shipping containers from them? Did they want us to go through the Cultural Revolution and stop buying things? I don't think so. Welcome to Bourbon and Rum, the podcast dedicated to civil conversation. I'm Kent, I like rum, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle, I like bourbon. I tend to be a little more conservative. We're brothers talking politics over bourbon and rum.
What are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking bottles on my shelf that have one drink left. And so this last one I had was there was a little bit left of a 1792 12-year. And then assuming our conversation goes well, I've got a little bit left in a bottle of Blanton. So I'm trying to clear shelf space here. What are you drinking?
Excellent. Well, I got something delicious tonight. This is Plantaray is the brand. Used to be Plantation, and they changed the name to Plantaray. This is called Stiggins's Fancy Pineapple Infused Dark Rum. It's pineapple infused Barbados dark rum.
Oh, yeah. You know, I got my wife a bottle of that. She really likes spiced rum, but I got some of that pineapple rum, and man, that makes for some good cocktails. That's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good sipper. Interesting times. We're just a little ways removed from the ill-fated White House Correspondents Dinner, and maybe kind of talking about that. What break that down? What did you? I'm so pleased that nobody was hurt. I guess an agent got a couple of pellets, but no serious injuries. That could have been really, really bad.
Yeah. Well, a few indiscriminate shots in a crowd that size, and somebody could really, get hurt.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know quite what to make of it. Trump points out that people have shot at him because he's the most consequential president. I did see somebody who noticed that Gerald Ford had two similar attacks within a couple of months of each other. So I don't know if the consequentiality argument really holds.
Well, the other thing I found funny is I saw, several people quoted in the days and week after, and they're like, well, we still don't know why he did this. Really? He basically told the world why he did this, but,
I mean, I would think one's manifesto would be a piece of evidence.
Right. I just have no idea how this could have happened.
Yeah, it's insane. We need to get past this thing. But I have to say, I wonder, you can write it down. I'm not usually the agree with Trump about anything type. But yeah, I've said before, I think that we, for all the griping about the ballroom, I think it's crazy that we've been setting up a tent on the South Lawn for big dinners for this country. That seems beneath us. And why, this isn't the only big event that you'd have in the nation's capital. And so a secure place to hold it seems to make total sense to me.
Yeah, and I think they'll figure that out eventually. You think about the spaces that are in the original White House, like the East Room, and that they hold for events, and it's like, they're working off the scale of 200 years ago,
Exactly.
from a size standpoint, so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to think about this, though, and it does go to a degree of the rhetoric piece of, hey, and people say whatever they want. We've gone down the free speech path. I'm not in favor of limiting how people characterize a president, or they hate the guy and they think he's Hitler, or they think he's this. But the part I'm interested in exploring a bit is, this guy, probably find out, there was some mental and emotional challenges, but if you read his story and you read what he's saying, he seems like he's a guy who was leading a fairly contained life. He's a teacher and he's going to church. He seemed like an upstanding member of society. And I guess where I'm going with this is, and I think everybody has to make this decision for themselves of, at what point am I going to take arms in defense of the Constitution, in defense of the country, in defense of what I believe in? In fact, they did I saw some article today that they asked the German population, I'd have to pull the reference, but it was something like 6 in 10 said they would not take up arms to fight for their country. Like, no. No matter what happens, I'm not fighting. Or something. And I don't know what the question was. It's probably more nuanced than that. But at some point, does every person have even a responsibility or a duty? At what point do you take arms and go fight against the corruption?
Sure.
And if that individual believed that Donald Trump was much of what he's made out to be in certain circumstances, there are people, and there's probably people that will and probably have justified an active action like this. So then it becomes like, is there a point at which any government that somebody says, you know what, it's time I take a rifle or a gun or whatever and go raise hell? Now, I don't think, obviously, I'm not condoning, obviously, this in any way, shape, or form. I guess I'm just asking the question that if you lived in we talk about being in our own media worlds. If you're in a world where the devil is the president and he needs to come out for you to defend the Constitution, is this a problem we're going to see more of?
I think it's a fair point. I do think that, there are times, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to separate themselves from another. Starting line of the Declaration of Independence, we had King Charles speak to Congress, and 250 years have kind of smoothed things over, but that's exactly what the revolution was. And I don't know how this is going to play. This all may need to be edited out. There is a revolutionary impetus at the heart of the American. That's what we are. We were and I don't think that the founding fathers were itching to pick a fight. I think what they would have preferred is that the British just packed up their tents and went back home. But there is it's undeniable that there is that stream through our history. And I've thought about it, not like I'm contemplating, but yeah, is there a line at which I would fight for something? I don't know if I'm like the never fight for, but this is a whole different rabbit hole that we'll go down in a minute. I guess what I would say is this, to paraphrase Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings, there may come a day when the thugs are knocking on your door and you got to fight back to keep your country. But this is not that day.
Yeah.
We're not there. And no rational person, I know you think that Trump gets a bad rap in the media. I think that he cultivates everything that he gets. But I've not heard or seen anything, certainly in my news feed, which is pretty liberal, that would lead you to first of all, I don't think we're at the political violence stage. But moreover, what the hell would killing Trump do for us?
Yeah.
I got a lot of personal problems with the guy, but those really are personal. I would have an equal, maybe not the same, but as vehement a reaction to a President Vance or a President Johnson, or I'm not there's nothing on the horizon that I'd want to trade for. So no.
Well, yeah, and I'm not, and again, we got to be honestly extremely careful with any type of discussion of this sort. We don't want to meet our local Secret Service agents.
Of course,
there's certainly no. We certainly condemn this violence. I guess I'm just thinking about, is it a risk that others who are mostly rational people get worked up enough into a frenzy to go do something like this? And how do we prevent that risk? And I think, we're both, you take your most extreme left position, I take my most extreme right position. I think we're sensible human beings, and we're like, look, I mean, now if there was, people compare Trump to Hitler, and we can go down a rabbit hole of why people do that. If the comparison was because millions of people were being exterminated, I think, okay, we got a pretty good justification to be going and taking up arms for ourselves. But I think the reality is, of whoever's in charge, there's going to be a group of the population that is unhappy with it. I'm just thinking about, are there other people that are not like Unabomber mad crazy, but actually relatively sane folks, but are so worked up from an emotional standpoint in their little niche feed that they go and they do something, not worried about imprisoning these people, but it's like, you'd hate for somebody to be successful. And it could happen just as easily with the right,
Well, and I think
or the left. Yeah.
There's examples of it with the right. The guy who went to go shoot up the pizza place, he'd been reading and was convinced that this was the hub for all of these people abusing kids. And
right. Because I think the scary part of this is, and I think we do a disservice if we say, hey, these people are all crazy. Well, crazy is a continuum. And, if I look at Ted Kaczynski and Cole Allen is not Ted Kaczynski. I mean, he may not be rational enough to have a podcast with somebody with differing political views and have a civil dialogue, but he's not, straitjacket either. And so, if you lay out that continuum, there's probably a degree of folks who are at risk.
Well,
I don't know.
I think that to that degree, is there culpability on the media for catastrophizing? Yeah, probably some.
Well, but you're not going to fix it with the media.
No.
You're right. People are going to say whatever the hell they want to say.
But I was also going to say, I mean, one of the things that bugs me most about Trump is it's because of his nature that the world is enemies or people that do what I tell them. Like, and it's a binary for him. And
Are you referring to Trump, or are you referring to the famous speech on the floor of the Senate? You're either for us or you're against us.
well, I'm just saying that everything, like everything, comes down to there's no degree with him of you either do exactly what I tell you. You find me the 20,000 votes, Brad Raffensperger, or you do what I tell you, or you're dead to me. And that attitude, I think that's an obstacle in our debate these days. I think it's part of what makes political debate so toxic, because the tribalism, people, like, their identity's in crisis. If you disagree with somebody, I don't know. I just think that's a factor in the kind of toxicity that gets some, at least surface apparent, non-hermit in the woods guy to take a gun to a hotel.
Well, and I guess that requires more research, I guess. But then you do wonder about, I mean, the other people that have tried to do an assassination in the past. I mean, John Hinckley, obviously, he was a little bit out there, but some of these folks, like, I don't know the stories of these guys that went after Ford, or, there's been other plots throughout. It's just, and we may learn more about this guy, may not. I don't know. I mean, like, I kind of feel like we're not going to learn anything about it. Like that dude that took a shot at him shot him in Pennsylvania. I heard a damn thing about that guy he like went completely, there's no media reports or anything. I don't know why that is. It's really odd to me, because you'd think, like, John Hinckley's getting books written about him for years, and that kid that shot him in Pennsylvania is, like,
right,
completely out of the picture.
Almost erased, yeah. Well, and that fuels. You should have my YouTube feed for a week. There's a sizable contingent of people, and this is not really a left thing. I think this is a detached from reality thing. But people talking about, that there was something staged to that. I saw somebody breaking it down. And I thought it was BS, but he's got, like, frame by frame, and it's like this press guy is there, and the shots fire, and he goes away for 5 seconds, and he comes back with a bunch of media photographers that he brought out there, and that's when the picture was captured of Trump with his fist raised. I think when stuff goes crazy, I think stuff just looks crazy. So I mean, I didn't think much of that, but there's people that are like, see, that was a setup.
Well, and there's also what I see a lot on the right is when you have mass shooters or assassination attempts, if those persons' ideological views don't fit the narrative that the mainstream media is hoping they'll fit, you're going to see a lot less of that. So like when you've seen some of these trans shooters, for instance, well, it's like crickets, and because nobody really wants to talk about something that may impact, to some degree that would be natural of a group of people, that they don't necessarily want to talk to that. It's and that's why I think it to some degree, it's a lot easier if somebody is batshit crazy, because then you say, well, it had nothing to do with anything else.
Well, something that we've
the next bottle
talked about extensively outside the podcast, given the proximity of your residence to Dealey Plaza, is the whole Kennedy thing, and why did that generate such a level of conspiracy theories? And I think we've talked about this.
Okay. Have you gotten the tour of the 6th floor museum?
Well, honestly, I think the best summary of that whole thing was our old man, who his perspective was that he thought that it's possible that Oswald was just kind of a rogue guy. The problem was that the establishment thought it was a setup deal, and they were so worried that there was some kind of cover up out there that they wanted to cover. We don't really know what happened because their whole goal was to obfuscate and just hide it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, case in point of that is if you go through the Sixth Floor Museum in Dallas, if you go in there believing every word of the Warren Report, you're going to walk out of there like Alex Jones. I mean, you're going to think there's 6 shooters and like it doesn't make any sense. You just see where the guy shot him. Because all the trees they showed in the pictures, that they cut those trees so that they're the exact same size that they were in the day. And you see him where he had to weave through those trees to hit him in the back of the head when, I mean, he had shots galore that would have been, a kid could take.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But I think I'm kind of with what you're saying. Though. To me, a lot of it is, I hate to say it, I'm going to say the E word, but a lot of it's like the Epstein thing. I think everybody's wanting a smoking gun, explanation that's going to shock everybody and lay it all out there. And I think you're going to be disappointed.
Well, yeah, because wouldn't it feel better if that whole thing was the culmination of a 50-year experiment by the Mossad to control the world's most powerful people? And you realize, no, maybe it's just a jackass who, right? Like that's more disturbing. The fact that it took the Mossad 50 years to hack us. Okay, well, that's not terrible. Some goofball from Brooklyn figures out a thing that people are into and he monetizes it and he buys an island. Like, that's kind of hard to swallow.
It's funny, almost full circle, kind of this Cole Allen thing. It's like, if it turns out he was just somebody that got hyped up reading the news and pissed off, and other than that, he's a fairly normal guy. I think that's scarier to grasp than, he was hired by the Mossad or he was there's some crazy explanation.
Right. I want to pursue something because that comment by the German people, that really caught my attention.
Let me get that right, Kent, so I don't screw that up.
But it made me think about something. Like, we've talked extensively about the nature of warfare changing. And it kind of makes you wonder, if you live in Germany, if you're my age and you live in Germany, you were either in East Germany or West Germany back in the day, right? So you've lived under either a divided Germany or a united Germany. If you're older, you might have lived under 3, but like one of the things that I'd be thinking is, like, who are we fighting to protect our 16%? Wow, would definitely take up arms.
Would definitely, yeah.
But, okay, so one of the things you got to think about is the adversary. Like if they're thinking, all right, we're either Germany or the French and the Brits come in and we make a united Europe and they want to conquer us. They're like, well, I don't know. I go to France every weekend. I've been to Britain 3 times. It's okay. Who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like the difference is...
What's the impact? Or is it going to be, we're going to be... I was watching Seinfeld rerun last night, and I forget the title of the episode, but Elaine is dating this guy, and she's describing him to George, and he's like, yeah, he wears drab clothing all the time, and he doesn't like to spend money, and he's a part of this strange organization. And George's like, he's a communist, and then it goes down this whole path. And yeah, of course, the guy is a communist, and they get in this argument because she wants to buy a striped shirt for him. He's like, no, I just want, olive drab colors. So.
Well, okay, so little thought experiment here. I mean, I'm going to invalidate a lot of things that I've said over the years, but we're worried that China wants to take us over. What would that actually look like? Like if we just waved the white flag and said, China, we're all yours, you're in charge. I mean, what percentage of China's economy is us buying knockoff Tupperware in shipping containers from them? Do they want us to go through the Cultural Revolution and stop buying things? I don't think so. What would they want it to be? I am not arguing that we would just roll over and let China take over, but really, what does conquest today look like? I mean, the whole Ukraine thing comes down to this, and it's one of the ambiguities that I think is hard. There's people that live in the western or the eastern provinces, and they're probably like, well, no, I'm a Ukrainian. I want to be in Ukraine, but I don't know, as long as the grocery store is open. At some point, what do you care?
Well, yeah, and I think you kind of hit on it earlier. I think a lot of it is the American viewpoint, which is far different than other countries. Yeah, I think any of those countries takes us over. The economy could be great. Hell, we could be making more money. There could be all that's going to be good, but the part that I think America cherishes the most are the things that would be in jeopardy. Like, you used to be a pastor. Try being a pastor in China.
Right.
I mean, as long as you use their abridged Bible, which probably replaces the emperor instead of God or something. But, freedom of speech, all the Bill of Rights things, freedom of assembly, the Tiananmen Square situation, that is important to us. But if you're in a place that largely doesn't exist or isn't that widely enforced, yeah, you're a great point. Germany, I was reading something, I don't know the source, I could pull it out, but something that they were talking about, many countries have a Bill of Rights, but they're mostly meaningless because they're not core to the Constitution. Like freedom of speech here is actually freedom of speech, and it's a constitutional right that's guaranteed. We talked about England, for instance. They got this law. They arrested 15,000 people last year for social media violations. Well, if you're living in a place that's going to arrest you for a Facebook post, to your point, China takes over. Okay, well, I mean, I know I can't do this or I can't go to church. Whoop they do. And it's really that apathy that develops, I think, in these areas where the government has already got too much power.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not arguing for it. It just is interesting. It makes me think.
No, it's a great angle to talk through.
It makes me think about a book. I guess it was actually technically an essay, and I'm looking it up so that I get my facts right. The End of History, which was written by Francis Fukuyama, an American political scientist. And he wrote it in 1989. And so it's 1989. Think about the setting, right? This is after the fall of the Berlin Wall, but before the Iraq War, or before the Gulf Storm, the first Gulf War. And it's like the only time you could have actually written this book. But his point was kind of this. After communism falls, his point was they have different values and stuff, but the bottom line is that you look at the way the economy goes, And honestly, American style Western capitalism is so far superior in effectiveness, maybe not morality, but in effectiveness, than anything else that's comparable. His point was like, history's over. The struggle between people trying to, dominate their will to things. That's kind of my point. Like, if China took us over, whatever else they wanted us to do, whatever freedoms they wanted to take from us, they want us going to Costco on a Saturday morning, whatever else happens. And in other words, and his point would be broader than just economics, that freedom itself. And, candidly, China, for all of its flaws, is a hell of a lot more progressive now than it was in the era of Tiananmen Square. Right? Like, again, I'm not papering over their flaws, but even they have, they've come around way more, and there's still struggles, what they're doing in Hong Kong, but even they've kind of concluded, well, if you let the people do their own thing, it kind of works out better.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's still a pretty repressive place.
Of course.
I think that also then, is there a relationship between a fully free society and a less fully free society in terms of consumption and productivity?
Yeah.
And I don't know. China is certainly a pretty productive place. There's a lot getting accomplished there, but would they be who they are as an economy without us as the consumer?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So I'm going to admit this. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but or more of an asshole than normally, but we grew up in Michigan in the auto industry. There were a lot of people that were really that buying a Japanese car was considered a, kind of a mortal sin. And, a mentality that says, look for the made in America label on everything. And, I love this country, but I've always resisted. I'm like, I'll buy if it's made in America, if it's made better, if it's in America. Like, right. I believe in the market economy, and I'm not going to give somebody a pass to make crap just because they make it in Detroit rather than Mexico. Like, no. But, when you put it like that, it makes me wonder more and more. I think about a lot. I think about it more than I act on it. But what does my purchasing and investing power, how is that governed by my values? And should I buy American, not because the stuff is better or because I'm just approaching a protectionist regime, but to say, no, I'm not going to buy cheap crap out of a shipping container from China because cheap crap out of a shipping container in China was made by people that are arguably unfree.
Yeah. But and I think that's a lofty aspiration. The problem with that logic is you start going down that rabbit hole. The only answer is we all go out and live in the woods someplace off grid, because everything you're going to touch is going to be tainted by either, the sweatshop doing it, or corporations that are operating in a way that you don't agree with, or they're sponsoring people that you don't, because I'm always seeing these. What was it just recently? Somebody's like, well, we need to boycott Starbucks. And I'm like, okay. I don't know what they were pissed off about, but you start playing that game, you're not going to be able to buy a damn thing from anybody.
Right. Because that presumes that Starbucks is any more villainous than Caribou or Big B or another. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that's the problem, is the knowledge of it or the visibility to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not arguing in favor of, I for one welcome our new Chinese overlords. But it it does make you think, how much of
Well,
this are we running and how much of this is circumstantial too?
but I think to me the bigger question that raises is, you know, there's not there's a lot of places that are not going to be willing to fight, and it kind of goes back to this whole NATO thing, and Trump wanted to exit NATO. Well, there's a reason these people aren't spending much on defense. Most of their people don't even want a defense. Like they don't care, and so then it's like, who are we allianced with that they don't even care if, I mean, the majority of the population would be fine getting taken over by Russia. It's like, well, what the hell are we fighting for?
Well, but then how much of that security, we would flatter ourselves to say that, they know the United States is going to come in and protect them. I don't know. I look at what Putin's done or not been able to do in Ukraine. Yeah. I think even a anemic German, French, and British military probably are a sufficient deterrent that he's not going to try to run troops across Poland and go after them. You know what I mean?
Well, honestly, I think the strongest argument for why NATO doesn't need to exist anymore is Russia is not the all-powerful nation everybody wants to make them out to be. I mean, they can't field an army. Everybody's, sucking down vodka and they can't accomplish anything. I don't think we ought to be that worried about it. Now, you want to say, hey, we want to form the NATO of Southeast Asia. Well, maybe there's some containment that goes on there, but
yeah,
I don't know.
We tried that game a couple of times in the past.
Well, yes, exactly. Yeah. Maybe we go to a small nation that's in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. That end of history is an interesting idea, and of course, it just got laughed out of the world. Right after it was published, because then we went into the Desert Storm, and then we've been at war in the Middle East since 1990 to one degree or another, right? Or maybe before that.
I do think, though, there is a relation there, and I talked about it a little bit a couple podcasts ago, in that the anecdote or the antidote. Not the anecdote, the antidote. Get my terminology right. The antidote against the totalitarianism of the old Middle East is free market economies.
Right.
Even if there's some totalitarianism, like the UAE or Saudi Arabia or what have you. I mean, the success of those countries compared to the old guard of Iran and Syria and some of these is really striking.
Yeah.
And I, we're following the Iran situation. We hope, I'm hopeful this is successful. Not sure if this initiative is going to do it or not, but I think the days are numbered for these totalitarian regimes that are solely reliant on totalitarianism and the ruling class and the ideologues, just because of to me, the Gulf nations are a testament to and those are just as challenging of a cultural barrier to a stable country as Iran or Iraq, and even Iraq now has come around largely because of that investment and because of that stable economic success. I really think how long the rest of these yahoos stay in power, who knows, but their days are numbered.
Yeah.
And even China. I mean, look, we're talking about strategically opposition to China and everything else, but part of why we haven't been at war with China. And part of why we have peace is because everybody's going to Costco and buying crap that's made in China. You know what I mean? It's like these economic factors are what keeps the world moving in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, as recently as World War II, there was a lot less of that global networking of stuff. And so how much does that fabric just act as a security blanket to a degree? Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.